Hello and welcome to Video Game Hangover. I'm Randy Dickinson and I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Hey, I'm DJ Ross. I am in Mountain View, California.
Each week here on Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. On this week's show, we're talking about the Castlevania Advance Collection and Beastbreaker. Plus, we're wrapping up Psychonauts 2.
Ooh. Finished a game.
I finished a game! What a novel concept. It is a rare occurrence that I actually see the credits roll on a video game.
Did you sit through the whole credits? Make sure everybody gets their due?
I did because I wanted to see if there was anything extra at the end.
Oh, like Captain America shows up or something.
We've all been ruined by Marvel movies, yeah. That there has to be some additional thing at the end of stuff. Yeah. So there was, in this case, there was an extra thing, and it was super satisfying. So I'm glad I did it. The credits are long. The credits include the name of everybody who kickstarted and figged the game back in the day. So it just goes and goes and goes. The good news is I discovered about halfway through the crawl that if I held down the left stick, it would just fast forward through all of it. So I was like, oh, where is this information a minute ago? So, yeah, not to deprive anybody of their moment.
Right.
But, I had to scan through all those names to get to the extra scene at the end of Psychonauts. And the cool thing it does is it sort of drops you back into the game and lets you go back and collect all the collectibles and whatnot you missed the first time around. So.
Oh, nice.
It was fun. Yeah. It's a great game, without mincing any words. I had a hell of a time playing this thing. I clearly would not have crossed the finish line if I was not enjoying it. But just an absolute delight to experience all the way through. I had such a good time with it.
Just finish a game out of spite. Just like, I'm going to watch the credits on this one just because I'm that angry.
No. I usually peace out well before the credits roll on a game like that. Unless it's one of those, little shorty 1 hour kind of like Frog Detective type of games.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, well, that's, the internet says it's only an hour long. I'm at 45 minutes. I might as well see this thing through.
The credits are like 40% of it.
Right, exactly. But no, I checked my save. I spent 21 hours with Psychonauts 2.
Wow.
So fairly substantial video gaming experience. But yeah. And then, as soon as they dropped me back into the game, I went to GameFAQs to find the location of everything I missed the first time around. So I've been running around in Psychonauts a little bit more, trying to gather up all of my little collectibles and stuff.
Nice. So you get that 100% on your save file or whatever?
Yeah. Yep.
What
plus I have sort of my full suite of abilities and everything's pretty much maxed out now. I'm max level, like 5th level tier on all of my skills and abilities and upgrades and stuff like that. So I feel like, there was probably a lot of things, and undoubtedly a lot of things that I sort of saw as I was playing through it that were on some far off platform or wedged up in a tree someplace or whatever. And I was like, well, not today. I'll come back later after I upgrade. So now is the time to go back and, do all my fancy moves and get all that stuff out of the trees and stuff.
That's always fun. It's like, yeah, I'm so much more capable now. I just need to remember where all those ledges that were slightly too high were, or
right.
where all the doors with the weird lock on them. Whatever you unlock during the game.
Yes, yeah. There is one. How to best sort of convey this. This is not a spoiler. Early in the game, you will encounter a door that has a little mail slot in it. And you can't seem to do anything with it. And then later on in the game, you'll find many, many other doors all over the place that have a little mail slot. Eventually, guess what? You get an ability to go through the mail slot. But it's tied up in some other thing. There's some whole sort of explanation behind it. It's really well done. Yeah, racking my brain trying to remember where the hell were all those doors 19 and a half hours ago. So yeah, it definitely had to Again, go back to GameFAQs. There's a lot of garbage on GameFAQs, but when you need them to do the thing that GameFAQs has always done, they're there for you.
GameFAQs has never led me astray. I don't know what you're talking about.
No. maybe I'm finding the wrong stuff, but yeah.
Well, you're talking about the guides or like the forums? Because you shouldn't read the forums, because that is a dumpster fire a lot of the time.
Right, yeah. No, the guides are great. And the people who put the crazy amount of hours into sort of documenting and writing all of those things and in a convenient .txt file for me to download is super helpful. And, those people make the world of video gaming a lot better. But yeah, the forums are awful. But inevitably I will where's the door with the mail slot in Psychonauts 2? And it will take me to a forum post about that. And I have to sort of reverse engineer my way back to a walkthrough.
I love the GameFAQs forums though, because they're such a specific flavor of kind of like elitism and like passive aggressiveness.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like I don't know. You just don't see that specific sort of poster on a lot of other forums. A lot of other forums you just get just people are straight up rude to you. But on GameFAQs, I don't know what it is. I feel like it comes from. I feel like the audience there is slightly younger than the other forums, but it's just different. I don't know what to make of it. It's very interesting.
See, I was gonna theorize that it was an older crowd because GameFAQs.
Oh,
this is like Internet 1.0, right?
I guess I could see that.
So if you're still hanging out at GameFAQs, chances are you were hanging out at GameFAQs in 2006 or whenever when it launched. So that was my thought. Yeah, that maybe it's just sort of like surly old people.
That could be the case. There could be a lot of just career GameFAQs people still on there.
Right. Yeah.
Somebody will.
I've not done the research on this. Just spitballing it here, but
yeah.
But yeah, Psychonauts 2 would recommend if you have access to it, and I think most people do if you have Game Pass for the Xbox or for the computer. You can play it in there. That's how I played it. It's part of your Game Pass membership. There is a PS4 and a PS5 version of it. I didn't know that until just recently. I was like, I didn't know this came out for the PlayStation. So yeah, Psychonauts 2 is out there to be played on a myriad of devices. If you like, if you like good things, if you like things that are funny and smart and make you feel good and funny and smart about playing them, I would encourage people to check out Psychonauts 2.
You're going to have to go check it out on the PS5 now, and you can experience all those psychic powers and the the little haptic effects that you get when you use them on the controller.
I don't know how much of an upgrade the PS5 version is. I might have to do some research into that, but I got 20 hours of my life tied up in my Xbox save. There's no way to carry that over, unfortunately.
Well, you don't think it'd be worth it just to experience it all again with this the magical controller?
It's too many games, TJ. There's just too many. I can't. Can immediately launch into a Psychonauts 2 replay when I have, Deathloop and and what else? Ratchet and Clank and Disco Elysium and a number of other games calling my name. Metroid Dread.
That's not even a real thing.
Have I got a surprise for you?
At least not for a few more days.
Right, exactly. There's a treat in store for you this Friday.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I'll believe it when I see it.
So Psychonauts 2. In short, if I've somehow not been clear on this, would recommend.
All right. Cool.
Yeah. I keep seeing articles that are like, hey, Psychonauts 2 and Ratchet and Clank are like proof that good platformers are still being made. Like, was there doubts about that? Did people think... I think Ratchet and Clank has consistently been putting out good video games for quite a long time. I don't know if suddenly people are sort of like reminded that, platformers are fun.
I have to ask, and this is going to sound like sarcastic, but I honestly don't know the answer to this question. What is the difference between every Ratchet and Clank game? Like, how are they different?
The plot.
The plot. Okay, so it's basically a new episode every time.
Yeah, kinda. I mean, there are occasionally a new couple of weapons, but yeah, there is something sort of comfortable in the familiarity of that experience. You get new villains occasionally, but sometimes it's the same villain. Sometimes the villain in the previous game is an ally now, so there's like a continuous, like, Ratchet and Clank arc. That if you played any number of these games, there feel some degree of investment in. Yeah, I think they mix up the sauce a little bit. I mean, some of them are very much sort of an affectation of the generation they kind of came out in. The PS2 3D platformers are very much sort of like PS2 platformers. They, it's running and jumping and landing on tiny little platforms, and then you get to the PS3 generation, and they're a little more expansive and a little more high production value, and have a new cast of characters in the periphery and stuff like that. So I think that they just continue to kind of update the formula a little bit, but don't stray too far away from the things that people like me really like about the series, which is sort of approachability and comfort.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious because I don't know if I ever played one for more than like an hour. But whenever they show off a new one, I'm just like, this looks very familiar to me. And my closest reference point is like the Mario series, which I feel like 80% of the time they are very different from the one that came before. Like, oh, here's the one where he's in space, or this is like the open world one. And, they do a pretty good job of like making clear what is different with each new one. Yeah,
there's always, that's a very Nintendo thing, right? There's always some sort of little gimmick or hook or extra thing that's new about this one. Yeah. And I don't, correct me if I'm wrong. Well, not wrong, but correct me if my sort of analysis is short-sighted, but I don't know that I would agree that the Mario games are like character-driven or plot-driven.
Not
certainly
at all.
There is a comfort and a familiarity in sort of the Mushroom Kingdom and Mario and Peach's relationship and all that other stuff. And they tweak it a little bit from game to game. But there is not sort of a level of character depth and interaction and emotion that I think you would get in if you spent 12 to 15 hours playing a Ratchet and Clank game.
Okay. So people are more there for the story and characters than they would be for a Mario game, which is not saying a whole lot, but it's something I've never really been like, oh man, what sort of hijinks is Ratchet going to get up to this time? Just not invested to that level.
It's compelling, but it's not the only thing that you show up there for. I think mechanically those games are always a lot of fun. The big kind of over-the-top crazy weapons are just a delight to play around with. And they always give you a ton of blow-up robot enemies to deploy those weapons in the use of trying to sort of crowd control. There's a ton of just kind of fun stuff to play with in those games.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. The Ratchet and Clank Future games for the PS3, I think there's 3 or 4 of them. Or when that series...
Who knows at this point?
I know, really, seriously. That series just went just crazy in terms of like so many things happening on screen at once, and really kind of embraced the potential of just doing super wacky video game weapons. And the fun thing about sort of Clank Ratchet is that he carries kind of all of them at once. So you have this giant weapon wheel you pull up that has 14 really crazy guns, and just kind of play around with them until you run out of ammo, and then start playing around with the next one. They're a bit of a sandbox.
Okay. Well, now I know.
And knowing, as they say, DJ, is half the battle.
Right. Yeah, that is what they say.
Yep.
You know what else they say?
What else do they say?
It's almost that time again. Time for ExtraLife.
Hey, ExtraLife. Oh my god, is it the end of the year already?
Oh, it's not quite there. I mean, we got a few more months to go. That is kind of terrifying if you put it that way, though.
Yeah. That's always sort of like the it ushers in the end of the year, because inevitably
it's the beginning of the end.
Right, yeah. Right, exactly. This is the end, my dear friend. But yeah, that's the weekend that they set the clocks.
It is.
Back.
Yeah.
Back or ahead? What do you do in the fall? Fall back.
Set them back, yeah. Very,
Yeah.
very questionable that they always pick that weekend specifically. Like they couldn't just shift it a week and everybody would be happier.
Well, then it would end up on, Halloween weekend, and then nobody would play.
I guess shift it the other way. I don't know. There are solutions to this. I feel like they could they come up with something.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, you're probably right. But yeah, so that's how you turn a 24-hour video game marathon into a on-the-fly 25-hour marathon.
Yeah.
But yeah, so coming up on Saturday, November 6th, for the sake of our listeners, DJ and I, of course, will be playing. Playlist to be determined at a later date. We still have a few weeks to go, but we would love for you to join us. Stay tuned for... What do they stay tuned for? We didn't talk this through.
Stay tuned for, this is just a quick teaser. It's still a ways off. It's like a month out. But just want to, let people know when it's coming up so they can save the date. That Saturday, November 6th, all day. That's it, right?
That's it. That's the whole thing. Everything.
We will be definitely talking your ear off about it in the weeks to come as it approaches. So, stay tuned, like you said.
Last week I mentioned that this week was Metroid week. I was a little early on that because Metroid doesn't come out until Friday.
Yeah, I was a little confused about that.
We are recording this on Monday. So technically it is the week that Metroid Dread comes out, but we will not have had an opportunity to play it until the next episode. So apologies to anybody who was excited about Metroid week.
I think it's fine. Metroid fans are used to just constant disappointment at this point.
What's one more week on top of the 19 previous years that came before?
Just use that time to, replay Other M and get yourself, mentally prepared for this one.
Up to date, yeah. So we have filled the time this week with a couple of other video games. What have you been playing,
like
DJ?
3 video games.
Wow.
Actually, I played 4, but we're
in their entirety.
Well, not in their entirety. No, I jumped around. I got this Castlevania Advance Collection, which we touched on briefly last week because they surprise announced it at the Nintendo Direct.
Yeah.
Actually, I guess this one was less of a surprise than ActRaiser was because people had found this, somebody raided it in some region months ago. So people had an idea this was coming, but lo and behold, it turned out it's real, and it came out last week. And I played some of it.
Nice.
Kind of goes hand in hand with all the Metroid stuff as well. It's a little Metroid-y.
Yeah, definitely. It's the other half of the Castlevania thing, or the other half of the Metroidvania thing.
Right. It's the entirety of the Castlevania.
It's thing. The entire. Correct. Yeah. What era of Castlevania games does this harken back to? Speaking of fans that have been very patiently awaiting a new entry for a very, very long time.
Right. So, as you may have surmised from the title, Castlevania Advance Collection, this includes all 3 Game Boy Advance games. And in a shocking twist, includes one more game, which is Dracula X for the Super Nintendo, which I'll get into a little bit later, I think. But really doesn't have any business being in a collection with a bunch of Game Boy Advance games. So it's just kind of a confusing extra that they've tossed in there.
I've heard it is also not the ideal version of Dracula X.
No, you have heard correctly. So it's just kind of even more questionable.
Yeah. Because that game was eventually sort of released, I think, for the Vita, right?
They did a PSP remake. They did they got the whole sort of 2.5D remake treatment on the PSP. Gotcha. Remember when that was a thing?
Was it a PSP? I was trying to remember which Sony handheld it was, but yeah, I didn't realize it was that far back.
It was, yeah. But anyway, I'll get into more detail with that later.
Yeah.
I was, out of this collection, I was the most interested in revisiting the first one chronologically, which is Castlevania Circle of the Moon, which was a Game Boy Advance launch game, I believe.
Wow.
I have just nothing but very fond memories of this game because when the Game Boy Advance came out, I don't know how long it had been since the original Game Boy, probably 10 years. I don't know. Don't quote me on that. The Game Boy had been around for quite a while. Actually, maybe I'm a unique case because I never really got on the Game Boy Color bandwagon. I never had one of those.
Oh.
So I kind of skipped that weird sort of half-generational upgrade. But, suddenly here comes Game Boy Advance. I picked one up and this game was available for it, and it was kind of mind-blowing going from just old, the black and green Game Boy games to playing something like this, which, felt like you're essentially playing a Super Nintendo game, except it's on a little handheld. And it was just unbelievable that was even possible.
How many years between the jump, do you remember?
Between, Game Boy and Game Boy Advance?
Yeah. Or between sort of Castlevania games of those respective eras.
Oh, I see. So this is actually an interesting thing about this game is, so this came out in 2001, I believe. Mm-hmm. Castlevania Symphony of the Night was 97 or 98, somewhere around there.
Okay.
And what's kind of amazing to think about when revisiting this game for me is that this was actually the second Symphony of the Night / Metroidvania style Castlevania game. I don't even know if the term Metroidvania existed at this point. But it's weird to think about, so between this and Symphony of the Night, there were just no other Castlevania games. I think there was one, actually. Some 2D game for, I think it was PlayStation 1. But just no other Castlevanias in this format, in this sort of Symphony of the Night sort of RPG Metroid format. Just weird to realize that, because now it seems like everywhere you look, it's just Metroidvania. All these, they've made so many Castlevanias. They've made 1 or 2 Metroid games, maybe more than that actually at this point. But it's all over the indie scene. You just everywhere you look, it's just Metroidvania. Yeah,
I think sort of interesting sort of side observation is that it's only in the indie scene. I can't think of a single AAA big budget multi-million-dollar Metroidvania style video game. That format feels like it sort of exclusively belongs to indie developers at this point.
Yeah, I guess, it depends on where you draw the line at what is an indie game. Yeah, but I think that's mostly true. No, I think that's probably true. One of the, I think of stuff like...
Good talk, thanks.
Ori and the Blind Forest is probably, seems very indie, right? But it just got a huge sort of marketing push from Microsoft.
Right.
I was reading an interesting thread this weekend on Shadow Complex, that game that came out for the 360.
Yeah, made by Chair.
Yeah. And people were like, was this game good? Or was it just the fact that it came out in this Metroidvania drought and sort of before the whole indie game boom?
I remember having fun with that game. It's unfortunate that series never kind of went anywhere. Although there was some connection to Orson Scott Card, right? And his sort of value kind of lost over time. I
think, once people figured that out, they're like, oh, this game, I don't know.
Yeah, feels kind of icky.
Yeah. But yeah, if you think about when that game came out, it feels like it really got a boost from just releasing when it did. But anyway, Castlevania Circle of the Moon, the second Metroidvania, just kind of wild to think about. As you would expect from a Game Boy Advance game, it's a little clunky to play in 2021. A lot of Castlevania games are pretty clunky, let's be honest. But this one especially, even though it's on the Switch, I'm using a nice modern controller, the guy still kind of clumps around on screen, is not the most agile character. But it's fine. I think I spent a little while getting adjusted to it. And since then, it has just been a very, very brisk, kind of lean Metroidvania experience. It is it's surprising to me, considering this is essentially the follow-up to Symphony of the Night, just how different a lot of the game systems are from that other game. I feel like later on, as they just kept producing more and more of these, they settled on a formula that worked pretty well and would make 1 or 2 major deviations from it with every new installment. But for the most part, they kind of, had their mold.
And you feel like that's a pretty significant departure from kind of the first blush of the Castlevania games on the early consoles.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, so I'm not even thinking about those at this point. That's just like ancient history. There's like pre-Symphony of the Night Castlevania, and then there's like just the Metroidvania era. At least that's how I think about it.
Yeah. I have fairly kind of limited kind of timeline with the Castlevania games. The DS games are my sweet spot. I've played all of those, enjoy them very much. Some are better than others. One in particular is better than the others. But that was kind of like the perfect kind of collection for me in terms of that kind of Metroidvania structure with kind of fairly modern play sensibilities, and fairly approachable in terms of difficulty. And having played that collection, and Googling and asking around on the internet, like, what other old Castlevania games should I go back to? It seems like the one that everybody really loved was Symphony of the Night. And then trying to work my way backwards from the DS games to Symphony of the Night was a very tough prospect. It just felt like a completely alien thing. Like, it didn't move the same way, didn't play the same way, wasn't structured the same way. It's certainly like an uglier game. So yeah, it was definitely hard to go back to, I think.
Symphony of the Night is so similar to those DS games. I don't know what you're talking about. I mean, it's not like going back to the NES Castlevania games.
No,
but I don't know. I feel like it's impossible to not enjoy Symphony of the Night. There must just be something that you're overlooking about that game.
I'm playing it wrong.
Yeah, you got the controller upside down or something. I don't
Must
know.
be, yeah. But yeah, I totally did not like Symphony of the Night.
That is weird. That is weird.
I mean, I didn't finish it, so as we go back to our conversation at the beginning of the show, I don't spend a lot of time with games I'm not enjoying. So yeah, did not see my experience with Symphony of the Night all the way through.
I don't know if your enjoyment is like contingent on you having finished the game. It's like, oh, here are the credits. I like this game now. But I don't know. I mean, it's good to, know when to cut your losses if you're really into it.
Absolutely.
But Circle of the Moon, I would say it definitely has an older school sensibility to it than the DS era games. The difficulty is a little bit, it's a little on the tough side. You have to be a little more, a little careful in your movement and everything. A lot of the bosses have taken multiple attempts to get through. Although it's interesting because I will run into a boss in this game and just get ruined by it. I'm like, oh, okay, so wasn't ready for that. And I'll just go out back into the castle and just gain like one level and then go back in and fight the boss again, and he gets steamrolled. So I feel like the power gain whenever you level up in this feels very significant. I don't know if that is just my imagination or what's going on, but it's a relief, especially after the first couple of times I ran into some bosses and wasn't able to triumph over them the first try. Although that matches up pretty well with my memory of how the game played, where it's not like you're just running through this entire game on easy mode. It's like it does put up a little bit of a fight, which is good.
Yeah.
One thing I really like about this, though, and one thing that sort of helps you approach all these battles, is that the unique system to this game is called DSS on the menu screen, very just ineloquently put, which stands for Dual Setup System. But what it boils down to is you basically have these two decks of cards that enemies drop every once in a while when you defeat them. And one deck is sort of like, I don't know how they describe them in the game, but basically a bunch of different abilities that you can modify by equipping one. And then the second deck is just a bunch of elemental properties. So for instance, to use this, you equip one card from each deck, essentially. So one combination you could do is you could equip the card that modifies your regular attacks and then put a fire element on it. So now you have a fire whip. You do more damage to enemies who are weak against fire. But there are so many different combinations that you can do by mixing and matching cards. You can give yourself a defense boost or an experience boost, I think. You can turn your whip into different types of weapons based on what elements we equip. And like most memorably, I think at one point, if you use the right combination, you can get like this little pistol, which is pretty weird for a Castlevania game. But just lots of different sort of fun combinations to discover. Whenever you run into an enemy and he drops a card you didn't have before, you immediately go like, oh, I just got to stop doing everything I was doing and just run through every possible combination of cards with this new one and, see what I can get out of it. It's pretty exciting.
That is cool. That seems like, a sort of very modern sensibility. That seems like something that, the last God of War game did exactly that situation with these little runes you find all over the place, and you plug them into your the handle of your axe or whatever, and it kind of modifies the game and modifies your weapon in some way. It's pretty impressive that Castlevania was sort of rolling in that a million years ago. Yeah.
It's especially interesting, like I said, coming directly after Symphony of the Night, which I don't remember if it really had an overarching system like this. Like, you could equip different armor and things, and you had a bunch of magic spells, but there was nothing really like this in Symphony of the Night, at least from what I remember. They introduced similar systems in the later Metroidvania games. I think, like, most notably in Aria of Sorrow, you could equip a bunch of different like monster souls that would give you different abilities. But this this DSS system is so simple and at the same time feels so just like flexible. It's very cool to come back and revisit it and try and remember all the useful card combinations that I used back in the day.
Cool. What are you rocking? What two cards are you playing with now? Do you remember?
Right now, I'm just using the one that gives you an attack boost. That's very good for bosses. I vaguely remember, I remember the gun, of course. You could get one that regenerates your health. I think if you stand still long enough, that was came in very handy.
Definitely.
And I think there was like a speed boost one, because while you can like double tap to run in this game, sometimes you want to go a little faster. So I think there was a combination for that. Cool. Just a lot of really different and kind of interesting options.
Yeah.
It's fun coming back to this as well after playing Hollow Knight. And as much as I was enjoying that game, I just felt like I was not having as much fun with the actual exploration in it. And I don't really know why that is. I like to blame the map for it, in that that game didn't really do a great job about updating the map in a useful way. But it's fun coming back to a proper Castlevania and looking at that classic sort of like blue and white map and just being able to see, oh, I haven't finished exploring this corridor, or, this room doesn't have a cap on the end, so obviously that's one of the rooms with like the door I couldn't unlock or the obstacle that I can probably traverse now that I have whatever new equipment I've picked up. And it feels like you pick up the like extra traversal equipment in this at a pretty brisk pace, so that's nice as well. It doesn't feel like you go hours and hours between being able to unlock an extra section of the castle and all that, which at some points in Hollow Knight I was just like, oh man, when am I going to be able to get past this weird thing that has just been like barricading me for the entirety of this game?
Man, that map thing is so important. I've been playing Metroid Fusion, getting myself ready for Dread to come out at the end of the week, and the same thing. You sort of open up that map, and you're like, you instantly, video game muscle memory knows how to read it, knows exactly where to go, knows what the little icons mean. The little S is the save room, E is the energy room. Yeah. So yeah, it's definitely a warm, comfortable video game blanket when you pop that menu open, and you're like, oh. This is, I know exactly how to read this. This is useful information for me. I know where to go. I know what's next. That makes a big, big difference. Yeah.
I think it's very telling just how effective the maps in each game are. When you look at the Castlevania map and it's just like, oh, this makes sense. And then in Hollow Knight, first of all, I don't think the map was great. And even though it gave you the ability to just mark a bunch of different locations on your map with like points of interest, I would typically put down a marker if there was like some landmark where obviously I would need to come back with a different piece of equipment later. Even having that extra tool, it was just so difficult to figure out where I was supposed to be going at any point. And in Castlevania, you can't even mark it at all, and yet somehow I just never got lost, really, going from one event to the next.
Excellent.
So I feel like just the level design is much better in this. Oh, so speaking of the difficulty, last thing on Circle of the Moon. Like I said, it is a little on the difficult side. But what is new in this Advance Collection is you can hold down a couple of buttons on the controller and just rewind, like rewind the entire game. I don't know how long it lasts. It's like maybe 30, 60 seconds. But, say you just take a stupid hit when you're fighting a boss or completely mess up some jump. It's super easy. Just rewind time to 5 seconds ago.
Oh, excellent.
Do it over. And it also gives you save states as well, so you can just save any time and reload. It comes in handy right before a boss room in case you don't want to make that long trek back from the save room to give it another shot.
Nice, that's pretty clever.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, it's a nice, just good accessibility option to have when you're playing these games that are like 20 years old at this point.
Is anything else in the game kind of monkeyed with from the original release? Do you feel like there's anything else that's been sort of updated for the Switch version?
I think they haven't made any sort of like gameplay modifications since the Game Boy Advance version, which is like, which is nice. I like having it presented exactly how it was. I keep kind of looking around in the menus to just see if they added stuff like, oh, maybe you get some extra health or turn on God mode or something like that. But I don't think those options are in there. But hey, you've got the rewind, you've got save states. What more could you need?
Those are pretty big. That sounds like a good idea.
Those are, yeah. Oh, one interesting thing is that a very nice thing about this is being able to play it on a TV screen. I don't know if you ever owned the original Game Boy Advance, but people who did probably know what I'm talking about. And what that is that it was impossible to see anything that was going on the screen unless you had an incredibly bright light source. I had one of those worm light things, which were basically just a Band-Aid solution. It was just really difficult to play any game on that system because it was so dark and there was no backlight. So on some level, I feel like I'm just seeing what this game looks like for the first time. And I'm like, oh, wow. You mean this game wasn't just 90% pitch black, like every single area? You could vaguely make out like the candlesticks in the background that you hit with your whip. But a lot of this game just very difficult to see. They didn't really realize sort of what the lighting conditions would be like on the Game Boy Advance. And didn't really take that into account when they were doing their graphics for this game.
What was the first Game Boy Advance? Was it the one that was more like a candy bar?
Yeah, it was the the controls on either side of the screen looked like I don't know,
like a Switch.
Yeah, like a Switch, more or less, the same layout.
Yeah, I think I was late to the party on that one. I got the clamshell one that kind of opened up.
Yeah, that's the one you want. I think that's the one with the backlight. Right. I do really like that just side to side sort of form factor, like the hot dog mode rather than the hamburger mode, or I don't know what you call that. The what was that? The backlit one, the Game Boy Advance SP.
SP, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't actually tried it in Switch handheld mode, which is sort of silly, but works great or looks great on the TV. So Circle of the Moon, really enjoying it. It may be an acquired taste, but still super fun to come back to this game.
Excellent.
The other games on here, I feel like everybody is generally a fan of Aria of Sorrow and then Dawn of Sorrow on the DS. Those are the ones with Soma, who's the white-haired teenager who's inexplicably wearing some huge fur coat. So I didn't check that one out again. I was curious about Harmony of Dissonance, which is the second one to release. So I probably played like half an hour of that. And that one feels like, where Circle of the Moon was this really interesting departure with this like card system. And you get just this guy who plays like one of the classic Belmont characters with his whip and everything. Harmony of Dissonance feels very much like it is really trying to stay close to the Symphony of the Night format, where you've got like the dashes. And I guess he still has a whip. That's a little unusual, but he even looks like Alucard, who is the protagonist from Symphony of the Night. So it really feels like, hey, remember that game? here it is again on the Game Boy Advance. And I remember it being pretty good, but just was having a hard time remembering what was really unique about it.
So you've played all of these at some point in the past?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I have all these for my actual Game Boy Advance somewhere.
Oh, nice.
Except for Dracula X, which is kind of an interesting history behind this thing. So at one point there was this game called Rondo of Blood, which came out, I believe, in Japan only for the PC Engine, or the TurboGrafx 16 over here. And it was a very much an old school style Castlevania game, not the Metroid version. And it starred this guy, Richter Belmont, who shows up again. It was actually the predecessor to Symphony of the Night. So that game was kind of like a continuation of the story with those characters.
Oh.
Generally pretty well regarded. Like you were saying, it got a remake on the PSP, but was never really available in English before that, at least as far as I know. Except at some point they made kind of a remake of it for the Super Nintendo called Castlevania Dracula X. And for whatever reason, it's just not as well regarded as that PC Engine version. And I never played it until this collection. Partially because I heard it just wasn't that good. Like you were saying, it's just people are saying it's not a great remake of it, or doesn't hold up to other Castlevania games of the era. But I thought, okay, well, so we got this weird sort of black sheep game in this Game Boy Advance collection. I might as well give it a try just to see what the deal is. So I played actually quite a bit of it. And it is very much in the old school Castlevania mold, where you are, you're Richter Belmont. You walk very slowly along the ground and upstairs, and you hit things with your whip. You get knocked backwards into bottomless pits. It feels very familiar if you played any of the old Castlevania games. Not being very familiar with Rondo of Blood, though, I can't really speak to how it differs from that version. But after playing it for a while, it feels... I feel like if you really liked Castlevania 1 through 3, and I guess 4 on the Super Nintendo, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't enjoy this as well.
It's right in the buckle there, right? It should have slotted in nicely to that taste.
Yeah, it was fine. It didn't... I don't know. It didn't seem particularly, innovative, or it didn't do anything especially new for a Castlevania game in that mold. But it's very serviceable. Maybe that's why people don't like it as much, as that it's not really doing anything new or interesting.
It's just hard to come by for a while, right? It just could not be accessed easily if you lived in the United States.
Yeah, well, so actually, you could get the Super Nintendo one. You could get this weird remake, just not the original, which is supposedly better. I think that had a lot more going on.
Gotcha, okay.
As you would expect, it is brutally difficult, especially after coming off the Game Boy Advance games. And I don't know if that's just... I don't know if this game is more difficult than the earlier Castlevania games. Those are also fairly hard. But it's quite a shock coming from the Game Boy Advance games, which are very, they're pretty forgiving. You can go level up your guy. You can carry a bunch of health items, all that good stuff. In this one, you've just got the 3 lives, and occasionally you'll find a thing of meat hidden in the wall to restore your health. Before you get knocked into a bottomless pit again. But I was struggling quite a bit with it. In fact, if it were not for the rewind function, I probably would not have made it past the first level, because it is just you got to spend some time with this one to really learn how to play it. But it's cool finally getting a chance to check it out. I'll have to go back to that the PSP game, because I think they had a port of the PC Engine version. Just so I can compare notes. But yeah, just weird random addition. The fact that they would put this game in the collection as opposed to the PC Engine original, I'm not quite sure where that reasoning came from.
Yeah, it seems like a weird choice.
Maybe this one just wasn't on any collection up to this point, and they wanted something else on there. I've been totally fine with just the 3 GBA games. So this one is just a weird bonus. Here, have this other Castlevania game that nobody really likes.
Yeah, and it's not a GBA game, so
yeah,
it's not Advance, as the title would indicate.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's around the same sort of technical level. But yeah, it's just weird. Anyway, Castlevania Advance Collection. I'm enjoying it quite a bit as a fan of those games originally. I think it's worth checking out if you're a Castlevania fan.
Cool. I was a little worried about the difficulty, but the rewind thing sounds like it might be the way to go.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I find like I don't use it very effectively even when I do use it. I haven't really resorted to it in Circle of the Moon, except in a few cases where I would just miss a stupid jump and fall like 50 floors down the castle and be like, I don't want to climb all the way back up. But I've tried to like not use it during boss fights. I'll keep my save state right outside the door so I can try again. But in Dracula X, it was getting super disgusting because I would get hit with like one boss attack, and be like, oh, I can do that better. Just rewind 5 seconds and get hit by the same attack. Like, oh, didn't learn anything there. Let's try again and just stretch these boss fights out so they lasted forever.
What was the Prince of Persia game that did that?
Oh yeah,
Sands of Time, right?
Yeah, basically that, but the guy is not just cleverly narrating excuses for why you keep dying over and over again.
Cool. Sounds like fun. I mean, I love, and I think I've said this before, I love when Nintendo does here's a cool new thing you didn't know existed, and it's out right now. So when that thing is something that, I'm kind of into, Castlevania games, I'm intrigued by Castlevania games. I certainly like Metroidvania games. So yeah, when that sort of popped up on the eShop on the day of the Direct, I was like, oh, cool. That's kind of a fun little bonus.
Yeah.
So I'm happy. It's a good thing.
I think at the very least you would enjoy Aria of Sorrow. I don't know if you played that one, but it's very similar to the DS games. I mean, it's basically the same game as as Dawn of Sorrow, which was the first DS game.
Which I've played, so I don't think I made the connection that there was I just figured there was sorrow in it a lot. But didn't make the connection that there was a previous game that had those characters in it.
Yeah, I think you could pick this up and like work your way backwards from Aria of Sorrow and just like quit when you stop enjoying it.
Good to know. Cool. I've been playing sort of a random kind of indie game that I've been tracking for a little while. This game is called Beastbreaker. It is from the creator of the game Threes. Have you played Threes? I think you did. I think you told me about Threes.
I think I did not play Threes, but I played... Yeah. What was the other one? It was like 2048. There are so many like knockoffs of Threes immediately.
Yes.
And I think 2048 was the one that really stuck.
Gotcha.
But unfortunately, I never played the original, which is, I apologize to that guy.
Yeah, that was quite a news story back when that game came out. So Threes was this mobile puzzle game that was released and then admired, appreciated, sold a lot of copies, but quickly and immediately got sort of knocked off and copied by numerous other games that sort of took the structure and conceit of the puzzle system in Threes and kind of replicated it in other ways. Yeah, which sort of drowned out, the original release, which, was unfortunate. It's too bad that, people stole his game in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and it's worth saying that, like, there was a lot more going on in Threes than just the puzzle mechanics, which were, like, fairly simple and easy to knock off, clearly. But
right.
If I remember correctly, like, not having played the game, like, each piece had like a face or something, or it had some degree of personality in a weird way that you wouldn't normally expect from a puzzle game.
Yes, it's been a little while, but I vaguely recall that. Yeah, It was 2014 that game came out. I just looked it up. That's surprising to me. That was a long time ago. But yeah, so that developer has a new studio now called Vodio, and their first game is this little game called Beastbreaker. I read about this on Twitter a few months ago, put it on my little wish list, and then lo and behold, last week it popped up on the Nintendo Switch eShop. And it is kind of a cool combination of a lot of things I like in a video game. So it is an unusual combination of like an RPG with a brick breaker game, or I've seen it sort of compared to like billiards or pinball in a lot of ways. So you're a little mouse named Skipper, and you are trying to protect the villages that all of your little woodland friends live in from these sort of rampaging monsters. So I guess maybe in that way it's a little bit like Monster Hunter. Didn't make
all right.
Didn't make that connection until just now. So you will get a new suit of armor and a new weapon and a new shield and stuff like that, and you will go into battle with these massive, just huge enemies that kind of take on a fragmented. I don't know how to describe it. They look like. They look like kind of cool art pieces almost. They don't have sort of connective tissue or anything like that. So like if it's a giant like crab looking kind of thing, you'll have these giant claws that are essentially sort of triangles kind of floating in space, and it sort of moves in a weird way, and it screams and will rampage and stuff like that for attacks. But it has, all the enemies have these kind of like protective shells around them that have little numbers on them. Here's where it turns into a brick breaker game.
They are multiples of 3.
They are not. No. You fling your little character. You line up a shot at the carapace of these enemies, and if you hit that part of the shell, the number of times that the number on the shell says, that piece disappears, and it exposes usually the kind of warm, gooey center of the critter, which then will also have a big number on it. And if you can hit that gooey center X number of times, you will defeat the monster, vanquish it, and be the hero of the village. So you're lining up kind of like Arkanoid style or hold down style shots and hoping that your little character kind of bounces around enough to be able to break through the armor and take out assorted chunks of these monsters. You can go for the body directly if you have a shot for it, or you can go for like the claws or go for the talons. Talons and claws are the same thing. I just realized you can go for the
either the claws or the talons.
Yeah, your choice. Or I don't know what else. What do they have? Mandibles, I guess, things like that. Sort of assorted parts of giant animals and monsters. And knock those out one at a time. You get a number of shots to be able to take before it's the monster's turn, and the game will sort of telegraph what sort of the attack path of the monster will be, and if you finish your shots kind of in the path of him, you'll take damage from that shot. The game will tell you you have 8 rounds to be able to defeat this monster before it rampages on the village. But each time you sort of take off a piece of the armor, take off a piece of the carapace, and hit the gooey center in the middle of it and break that piece off, it resets that counter. So again, you could go directly for kind of the big part at the middle of the monster and defeat it. But the likelihood of being able to sort of do that within X number of rounds is tough. So you do kind of have to whittle them down sometimes.
Got it.
Yep. The RPG element comes in with you being able to get kind of different weapons, different swords, different suits of armor that give you different perks and bonuses. They give you different types of attacks. So you'll have X number of units of kind of attack energy that you can deploy. And you can do, 2, relatively easy shots for 1 point each. Or you can bank up a bunch of points. You can choose to not take your second shot this time to save it for the next round, and do a 15-point shot that will give you, bigger damage, will bounce your character around more. Hey, if you've got the right suit of armor, you get 2 extra bounces per shot. If you've got the right sword, you do 3 damage instead of just 2. So you're also sort of doing a bit of a... what's the game I love that is like that? A Slay the Spire kind of thing, where you're trying to look for kind of the maximum deployment of all of these different, cards, essentially, different types of attacks that you can do, where you have a certain number of attack points and you're trying to spend them in the most kind of carefully considered way possible. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting in that this thing looks like It looks like The Secret of Nim. It looks like these cute little kind of woodland creatures, and you go back to your grandma's farmhouse afterwards, and she's actually your armorer. She will make cool new weapons for you based on the pieces that you find out in the field and stuff like that. And, you know, you'll hang out with your friends, and he'll give you advice on how to track monsters and how to do sneak attacks and stuff like that. So you're constantly in training. But all of the artwork is done like, you know, a cute little mouse, and your best friend's a cute little hedgehog, and stuff like that. So it's a little unassuming in that regard, that it hides a lot of kind of gaming depth behind this pretty unassuming package.
I guess that makes sense coming from the Threes guy.
Yeah, you would expect sort of layers to it, I think. And yeah, it's been fun to be able to you know, poke around with some of these controls and kind of mix up some of these weapon sets. And, you know, much like you're probably doing with the cards in Castlevania, trying to find sort of which combination of armor and weapon and shield and etc. Gives you kind of the biggest bang for your buck. All of the different types of animals have different types of attack or frequency of attack or different types of armor and stuff like that, and they have different classes. So there's suits of armor and weapons that are better suited to different types of sort of rampaging monsters. So again, you sort of get smarter about kind of how to deploy yourself and how to kit up before an attack, before a fight, to make sure that you're you know, best suited for the type of enemy you're taking on.
Do you ever line up all those bonuses perfectly so you got this huge attack wound up, and then you just completely miss, like, and hold down, just like ball bounces off a bunch of things and just comes right back to the surface?
Just whiff it completely, yeah. I have in fact done that, yeah. Yeah. The playfield is sort of broken up into 3 areas. The center is your rampaging monster that you're trying to attack. You are represented as this tiny little, I mean, just these things are sort of magnitudes of hundreds bigger than you are. So you're this tiny little bouncing ball, essentially, that is trying to ding around and break through the armor of these monsters. On the left-hand side, though, you have your list of attacks that are sort of brought out by the sword that you have equipped, by the armor that you have equipped, by any little perks and stuff like that you've brought into the battle with you. Inevitably, one of the cards at the bottom, they're in order of cost of attack, is this 25 pointer that does, you know, is supposed to do X number of damage and give you X number of extra bounces and on and on. I'm like, oh, that's the good one. That's the one you want to save. So you start, you know, constructively kind of banking all of your extra points, and you see a couple of 5s go by and a 15 go by, and those would be good attacks. Those would be fun, but man, I'm trying to save up for that 25. So you're trying to sort of operate kind of leanly and cleanly until you have enough points to be able to deploy that big attack. And yes, to your point,
and because miss with it, yeah.
Right, because it is a brick breaker game, because there is some degree of sort of physics and lining up the exact shot with a little dotted line and hoping it bounces in the direction that you hope it bounces. I've whiffed 1 or 2 of them and just completely wiped out my little wallet of points. And that felt really dumb. I wish I hadn't done that.
That's when you need that rewind. Just be like, oh,
that's exactly.
Do over.
Should be a standard feature in all video games.
Yeah. Don't know if I disagree.
But I'm having a really good time with it. I think it's charming. You like I said, you go back to your grandma's house afterwards, and you can kind of hang out in the kitchen with her and whip up new little potions and stuff like that. You can hang out on the couch with your friend, and he'll sort of spin lore about how to track monsters and things like that. You can go to the armory and trade in points, and your grandma will make you a new sword or make you a new suit of armor. And then you kind of lather, rinse, repeat, and go back out into the field and take on some new giant monster. I guess it sort of would matter how much you find kind of brick breaker games, billiards, pool, if you're in the United States, pinball, those kinds of things, fun and compelling, and sort of, draw joy from being able to kind of line up those perfect shots and get the perfect kind of bounce and stuff like that between the pieces that you're trying to take out. That's the puzzle of this thing. But it's interesting to see kind of all of the additional kind of RPG and deck building kind of mechanics that have been kind of layered on top of this pretty unassuming kind of cutesy little Arkanoid type video game.
Hmm. So if you don't take one of these things out on, I don't know, don't want to say your first try, but if you fail, you just go back to the village, pick up some more armor or whatever, and you come back a little stronger, like in Hold Down, essentially.
Yes, yeah. You Hold On, I think you just sort of washed out, and like you said, you go back and you kind of spend some of your points to upgrade and get a couple of extra bounces, a couple of extra balls, et cetera, et cetera. The mechanic in Hold On was that you were a space driller, right? You were trying to drill down into the core of these planets. In Beastbreaker, you go back and you kit up, like you get a better sword, you spend some of your points to get a better suit of armor, and maybe whip up some potions that give you a couple extra moves and stuff like that, or do some extra damage.
Got it.
And you hope that that's the proper combination of elements to vanquish the beast.
Nice. All right. Well, I mean, it sounds like just a very elaborate take on Hold Down. At least the progression does, anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, Hold Down, I think it was just super satisfying because it was just so kind of mechanically solid. Like, you point the direction you want the ball to go, and you let it go, and you hope it bounces around enough, and it was that over and over and over again in a lot of ways. There were some additional kind of bells and whistles to kind of upgrading those mechanics, but you really were just doing that thing over and over. Mm-hmm. Beastbreaker, I think it continues to be sort of fun and a little bit of a revelation every time you kind of get a new perk or a new thing, or Grandma whips up a cool new sword for you, and there's a little bit of a give and take where you have to decide what suit of armor goes with which sword and which potions you want to bring with you and stuff like that. So you're packing up and kind of outfit your character for maximum return during the battle. And it's certainly a layer of thought about these encounters that didn't exist in Hold Down.
Yeah. I'm not saying that, not saying it's a bad thing. It's similar to Hold Down, but it just feels like, the next evolution of it, if you don't try and make something quite that minimal, like how you can expand on it. Sounds cool.
Yeah. I loved Hold On. I mean, that game's a lot of fun, and I have tried to play a ton of mobile games that, proposition that they do the same thing, but Hold Down feels like the gold standard to me. So it's cool that, the developers of Beastbreaker have taken that mechanic, which is not exclusive to Hold Down by any stretch. Like I keep sort of referencing Arkanoid or any of those kind of old paddle games where you're bouncing a ball trying to break through bricks and stuff like that, but to sort of build upon that and take those mechanics and kind of warp it into an RPG, I think is pretty impressive. I don't know if anybody sort of playing Arkanoid felt like, what this needs is a levelable kind of progression system and different armor and types of attacks and stuff like that. I mean, in Arkanoid, if you would get multi-ball if you were lucky. You know what I mean? And that felt like, chaos on the screen. So the fact that it's, 30 years later, fast forward, and we have Beastbreaker and Hold Down kind of doing their unique things is kind of cool.
Did you try the World Flipper?
I didn't try World Flipper. No, I forgot about that, actually.
Oh, I think
I'm
you
going to
might
write
be
that
into
down
it.
in my notes. Yeah. It sounded like I would be. I don't know why I didn't actually turn that into playing it.
Cool. So, I mean, this sounds good.
So this is called Beastbreaker. It is available on the Switch. I'm not sure where else it's available. I didn't do the research on that, so apologies. But Switch is a great place to play it. I've been playing it in mobile for the most part, and portable mode, they call it. And it works beautifully. I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Nice.
Yeah. And that's about it.
Should we talk about Metroid?
Is it Metroid Week yet?
It's getting close. No, this is Metroid Week, right? When does Metroid Week start? Does it start on Friday?
It starts on, it's a weird week. It's a Friday through Thursday, we're going to call it.
I'd say normally it would start on Sunday or Monday, but there isn't Metroid until Friday, so you can't start over that Metroid.
Nintendo kind of does their own thing. So next week, we'll do a little Metroid Fusion, and we'll do Metroid Dread next week. It'll be all Metroid all the time.
All right.
Does that work?
I will just continue playing Castlevania until then, which is just kind of Metroid.
It's Metroid adjacent.
Right.
Cool. Well, let's wrap this thing up. If you need any more video game hangover in your brain, you should follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/VGHangover. And you can always get show notes and links and tell us what you thought about this episode at VGHangover.com as well. You should join us on Discord. You can hang out with us and talk about video games and pop culture and all kinds of other fun stuff that sort of appears on our radar. You can get a link to that at VGHangover.com. And we would love for you to subscribe, rate, and review us on your podcast app of choice, be it Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, whatever else is out there. Please, look for a subscribe button, look for a little thumbs up or stars or whatever you do in your app, and do all those things for us, please. And perhaps most importantly, help us out by telling your friends about the show.
Yeah. Most of the way we grow the show is through word of mouth. So if you recommend it to one person who's looking for a podcast, that would really help us out.
Yeah, definitely.
Tell your one friend who's a huge fan of Dracula X on the Super Nintendo that we were talking about it this week, and they should give it a listen and set the record straight. I don't know.
Yeah.
We want to give thanks again to Hal Binderman for our intro and outro music this week. You should head over to heavyviper.bandcamp.com. Listen to more of his stuff. Maybe buy an album.
It's good. We'll be back next week for the aforementioned Metroid
Week.
Yeah. Put it on your calendar, DJ.
It's really like Metroid Weekend. Those games are not very long.
Yeah, well, that's sort of the appeal of replaying Metroid Fusion at this point, is that the collective internet says it's somewhere between 5 and 7 hours long, and I'm like, I could do that. I got that.
Yeah.
So yeah. Hopefully the new one's a little bit longer.
I have a feeling it probably will be, but who knows? I'm not expecting like a 30-hour epic Metroid game or anything.
Oh no, I don't have time for that. That's fine. Let's let's find that sweet spot in between, please.
Yeah. Let's cap out at like 25 hours.
Ugh, God. It's the Persona 5 of Metroid games.
Yeah. I remember those games you used to get like a secret ending if you finished them in under 2 hours or something.
Oh, really?
And the first time I played Metroid Fusion, I was like, what? That's it? Where's my secret ending? How fast do you have to finish it this time? Like, you get 5 minutes to get through the whole thing.
GameFAQs told me that there's like a secret message you can get in Fusion.
I read about that too. Like, don't even bother with that. That is for serious Metroid heads only.
All right, well, we'll tune in next week to find out what that is.
More on that next week.
Yeah. All right, we'll be back. Have a good one. This is Randy Dickinson.
This is DJ Ross.
Thanks for listening to Video Game Hangover. Goodbye.
Good night.
See ya.